Hey, I'm Brett Dolan. It's always my pleasure to talk to coaches and athletes around the country. It's March. It's WNIT season, so we're going to Indianapolis. We're going to talk basketball with Austin Parkinson, the head coach at Butler, whose team is ready to jump into the WNIT with the home game. And, Coach, before we talk about the progression of the program and how you've built this, what's the excitement level just preparing and practicing to play in March in a postseason tournament?
Well, for this program, it's a really, really big deal. We feel like it's a great step in the right direction. I have so much respect for the WNIT. At my old school, IUPUI, they had never been to postseason play, and the first tournament that we were ever able to qualify for was the WNIT. And we played in that, I think, 6 or 7 times, and it really propelled us and helped us grow. And so there's a lot of excitement from our kids right now that we're playing in March this time of the year, and we've got another game ahead of us.
The WNIT means different things to different people, and I think that's well explained. It was a couple of years ago before COVID. I watched Arizona win the whole thing, and then once they got into the tournament after COVID, they go to the national championship game, and other teams just kind of building to get there. And I know sometimes we focus in on, well, who's in, who's out for the NCAA tournament. We forget there's programs that are building, that this means something to them, that it's important for the players. It's the next step. And I don't know about you, but that kind of always gets me excited to watch teams that really are excited to be playing basketball.
Oh, absolutely. And I think what you just said is a huge part is that idea of being excited about playing. We've got a good group of kids. We start 3 freshmen, and we've got a group that will be coming back next year. So they see this as a great opportunity. We played some of our best basketball toward the end of the year, won 5 out of our last 6, 6 out of the last 7, something like that. But then had a tough game on our senior day, and then in the conference tournament, we just didn't shoot very well. And so it's great that we're getting this opportunity to kind of reset, refresh, and get a chance to play tomorrow night.
I thought about that too, because if you don't play well in your conference tournament and you're done, it's kind of an empty feeling because you're like, we want to play another game. We want to keep playing. And when you don't have an opportunity, it's kind of difficult to ride off into the off season, still that desire to keep playing.
Well, I think the other part about it too is, so in our particular case, when I got the job a year ago, I inherited a team that won 1 game. We won 11 last year, and this year I thought we took several steps. We went on the road and beat a Big Ten team in Wisconsin. We went on the road and beat a top 50 team in Villanova, and so there's incremental steps that are taking place. But that next piece is the postseason. Like, what does that look like? If you're going to have success in the future, it's a different deal, and it's a different set of parameters. You've been beaten up on conference play for almost 2.5, 3 months. Now we get a chance to go play somebody that we're unfamiliar with, and so it's going to be a fun time and an exciting time.
I want to come back to that progression and how you built this program. Again, you mentioned you went through that stretch. I think you lost 9 of 10 at one point, but then you came back and won 5 of 6. What changed for you guys in the belief system after a kind of a rugged stretch and a tough schedule to be able to get back on track then in February going into the conference tournament?
Yeah, for the first part, we had a pretty solid non-conference. We were 8-3, and then we came out of Christmas and just kind of struggled. Had a couple games that I thought we could have got and didn't, and then played some really tough opponents, right in a series of games. But the big thing was we had one of our key players out. She's our best defensive player, and Jordan Melmans, and I think she's like top 5 in the country in 3-point percentage. But once she got back, it gave us a little bit of depth, and then the other part is our freshmen have been progressing nicely in the way that they've played. Each of them have done different things really well. And, we were close. I'd say a turning point for us. We played Creighton at home. They were top 25, and we were ahead at halftime. Now, we weren't able to close the deal out, but in past years, Creighton's really put a hammer on us. So that was an encouraging moment that kind of, I think, gave the kids confidence as we finished and headed down the stretch, and then really got some nice wins along the way.
You mentioned Creighton. I mean, you've got a tough league. UConn's in there, and yet you played Wisconsin, you played Vandy, you played Iowa State, so you're not afraid to step out of your schedule. But I don't know if people recognize when you start talking about the Big Ten or the SEC or whatnot, that the Big East has some really good women's basketball too.
Oh, Big East is incredible. I mean, I think that, I grew up in Big Ten country. So, I played at Purdue University. So obviously I'm familiar with that. But the Big East play and the talent in the league. But I would say this, the coaching in the Big East is incredible. You've got some amazing coaches. The other thing I like about the Big East is you can look at certain leagues and there's a certain style, a certain way certain teams play. The Big East is very eclectic. You've got motion teams in Villanova and Creighton. You've got the, overwhelming talent of UConn. You got the physicality of Marquette. You got the athleticism of Seton. Like, so your roster's got to have a lot of flexibility to the way you play. But I also think it does a good job of preparing you if you have an opportunity to play in postseason.
Yeah, I like that. And that's exciting too, just to talk about the different styles and brands of basketball. And Austin, we've kind of teased the fact a couple of times you inherited a 1-win team, and last year 11 wins. You've built that even bigger this year. This is not the first time you've done this, but when you inherit a 1-win team, there's no shortage of things to do. How do you prioritize installing that belief versus just your system and everything else? Where does belief come into play for young women as far as, hey, we can turn this around in a couple of years if you give me your best effort and I give you mine?
Yeah, I think it's a challenge. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, this is a rewarding year, but also a fun, a fun year, but a challenging year. And from the standpoint of, not just one win, they were getting beat by 22 points a game. And so kind of an interesting moment last year, we played St. John's to open up conference play. And, we were down, at halftime, and the kids were kind of like, hey, we can play with these guys. And ultimately we lost by like 8 or 10. And as a coach, I looked at the game, I felt like, hey, that's a game, I think we could have won. In their mind, they were like, well, we didn't get beat by 30. So like and so it's flipping that mentality. I thought this year there was a really neat moment and a loss. After we'd won several games in a row, we went to Georgetown, and Georgetown had a great year, played really well this year. And we went up there, battled. There was like 20 lead changes, and we lost the game. And after the game, the kids were really down in the sense that they felt like, hey, like, that was one we could have won. It would have really increased our seeding in the conference tournament. But that's just such a dramatic shift from that point, a year ago at the beginning of conference play at St. John's to, playing a road game and losing, and the shift in mentality. And there's a lot of stuff that goes in between that. I mean, it is not always pretty. It's not always, there's some hard moments in there, but I'm proud of the way the kids are continuing to buy in and see that change.
Well, it makes sense. You change expectations at some point, and you change expectations by playing better, by expecting to win, by being disappointed in losing. And I could see where going into that locker room or coming into practice the next few days, you realized that things had shifted just a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other part too is as you're going through this process, there's different ways teams have, built rosters. Some teams are 8 to 9, transfers every year. I don't think for us that's going to be sustainable, but, we've had some new pieces. Last year I graduated my leading scorer. My second leading scorer ended up being out for the year with an injury. And then we had a new point guard. So there were a lot of pieces to mesh. But what's exciting about this WNIT, I think that there is a great group of kids that are going to play in this tournament. And then as we go into next year, we've got something to look forward to and some continuity as we go in the off season. And I think that's a big piece of what we need to have.
I would agree because I think sometimes teams are veteran, senior laden, and they just want to keep playing. But I think where the WNIT can really propel teams forward is just what you mentioned. When you have returners and it gives them a taste of postseason, that one and done, and then to be able to play at home, we'll talk about that in a second. But it does kind of just create that constant building that I know you're trying to do with this program.
Well, and our goal is to create what you just said as a program, a sustainable program. I mean, the one thing I was really proud about at my last school is, we were we weren't 1 year first, next year ninth. We'd like to create something consistent, and you can't skip steps when you do that. You can't be flash in the pan. You got to create the culture and you've got to create consistency, but that continuity piece is important in developing players. And, in this day and age in college basketball, which is, the Wild West at this point, trying to be able to develop those players, keep those players, I think is really important. But as you mentioned, going to the NIT, you're going to have a team like Bowling Green. Similarly, they've got a new coach. He's done a great job. They've got to be excited to play. We're excited to play. And I think it's about being appreciative of the fact that, hey, you've worked for this, but it's also a reward. This is the rewarding part. All those months in the gym, like the postseason's the reward. And I think it's important to keep that perspective.
Yeah, I can see where that would make sense for a young lady too, because again, we're kind of in this crazy era where should we play, should we not play? And there's so much conversation. I really just enjoy following teams that want to be there, want to keep competing and playing. And it sounds like your team does. And Austin, I'd be remiss if I didn't go back because we've talked about your build here, but you did this at IUPUI. You inherited a 3-win team there and built that program up. So are there any similarities between your former job and this job, or is every job different as far as kind of those steps you talk about that you don't want to skip?
It's similar and different. Similar in the sense that, the not having had success before and changing that mentality. The difference I would say though is, this was pre-NIL, pre-transfer portal. And one of the things there was a very successful player for me at IUPUI that, I think early in her career, she might have transferred when things got a little tough. And that kid actually ended up staying it out. Was one of my favorite success stories, one of my favorite players I've ever coached. And ultimately, in one of our championship moments, she was the player that rose up. Now it's a different time. That you get the transfer portal's cool. It's one of those things that you get to the end of the year, and it's a different situation in the sense that it's great that if it doesn't work out, kids can go places. But at the same time, when you're trying to teach life lessons and growth and overcoming adversity, I think that's one of the biggest things I see is, the moment it gets hard, well, I want to, let me find something else. And then, that's not how, that's not how it works. When I got in my coaching career and I was passed up several times, I could fold the 10, or I could say, hey, listen, this is, I just got to stick with this. And so they're different. It's a different climate nowadays, but it's still rewarding to see, the growth and the buy-in. And it's been neat this year. Something for us, like we set a record for attendance, season tickets. Like, there's just little things that you're trying to do and increase as you're building the program. And we're excited about that.
That's well explained about the different eras. And I'm with you. I think we're both old enough where we could go back and have stories and anecdotes about players who would have left had that option been available to them, that stuck it out, that ended up benefiting from that. And I'm always wondering if we're skipping something where, it's nice to focus, you're right, on the players that go to another stop and maybe their current situation wasn't working out and it works out for them. But I wonder about the kids that it would work out at their current stop or situation that leave and it doesn't at the next level. And if we're doing a disservice to some of these kids because, a little stick-to-itiveness and little hard work, and maybe this situation that you're at will benefit you. And if you leave and it doesn't, you're just kind of a rental at the next stop, maybe. So I'm wondering if we're just missing a layer of kids that are too easy to leave and transfer.
Well, it's tricky. I mean, I think transferring can be a positive thing, and in the sense that, I'll give you a great example of on our team right now. Ari Wiggins went to Michigan, which is an incredible program, and they have a lot of success during the NCAA tournament right now. And she gave it 2 years, and that was one of those things for her. I don't think she was going to, in their system, play beyond that. They obviously recruit really good players. She had a chance to come back home, and her families that are at the games. She's done a great job, and she's helping rebuild this program as an integral part of what we're doing. To me, that's a beautiful story. That's a success story. But then the other sense, like, I think I saw something yesterday, like on the portal, there were like 39 kids that were the leading scorers on their team, all leaving. And it's like, is that healthy? Is that great for, basketball? Is that great for, the growth? I say this, I played for Gene Katie, who was a Hall of Famer. Okay. But I think we all know Coach Katie, not an easy guy to probably play for at times. But I remember calling my father and being like, Dad, I don't know if I can do this. And he gave me the talk of, son, here's the big picture and whatnot. And, the reality was it was a great thing for me and for my character and my learning experience and being able to push through that. So there's both sides of the coins. It can be a very beautiful thing and a very productive thing for young ladies, but also at the same time, the sense of just the grass isn't always greener. You know what I mean? And at that point, it's tough. And then the other thing is people don't talk about it is like when you're transferring, you're at a place 3 years, you're in a major and a business major, if you're transferring to another school, a lot of times you're not transferring and, those credits don't always transfer. So you're probably not transferring to the same major. So there's a lot of different things involved that have shifted a little bit.
No doubt. as a Hawkeye, I remember Gene Katie well, and I'm sure there were a few of those nights where you go home and you wonder if that's going to work out. Before I jump back into your team, while we're talking about that, you were a men's basketball assistant before you were a women's basketball assistant. What was that transition like?
Yeah, it was an incredible situation. So I had the opportunity to work for Ron Hunter, who was a great person to learn from. I felt like I learned as much about being a head coach, observing him and our day-to-day meetings. He was a full 2-3 zone coach. I played only man-to-man in college with Coach Katie, so I got to learn that. But it was definitely, a different dynamic. And going into my third year working for him, they fired the coach at IUPUI 4 days before the first practice. They were restricted on scholarships. There was a story in USA Today about, kind of a verbal abuse type thing. And so they came to me and said, "Hey, we'd like you to be the interim coach for the year. And beyond that, no guarantees. You can apply, you can not." Coach Hunter was kind enough to let me do that. And that team had won 3 wins before that. We won 4. Now, for all the things we've done in a positive way over the years, I still think those 4 years or 4 wins, they could do a Disney movie about it, because it was so wild. But it was from there that I had the opportunity to take over that program at IUPUI, and we went on to do some really special things over the years. And then I'll always be grateful that Mike Moore was the AD. He took a chance on me. Didn't have to. He was in an unenviable position, and I was able to make the most of it, and it was a really neat deal.
Austin, if you're not a popular speaker on the coaches convention circuit, you should be. I mean, the life experiences that you can kind of throw out there that maybe not everybody gets to participate in or partake in, and maybe that's a good thing. But I mean, there have been some, peaks and valleys or some ups and downs as you've built your personal journey and career.
Yeah, it's definitely not been a straight line. I remember at one point, I graduated from Purdue. My dad's the all-time assist leader. My grandfather's a Hall of Famer at the University of Kentucky. And so I got into coaching naively. I just thought, well, I was a point guard. I know the game. I've got a lot of contacts. I'm just going to boom. I'm going to be, whatever Big Ten assistant. And I quickly found out that's not how it works. And I was a dobo making, doing laundry, making milkshakes at 7 a.m. I was a GA at the University of Indianapolis. Like, my journey was one that it was a interesting path. The other part, though, is that I appreciate is, like, when we were at IUPUI, we had kind of the smaller budgets. We didn't have a marketing staff, any of that stuff. So, as the head coach, I'm learning how to Photoshop. I'm YouTubing how to do. I mean, I can still see me driving downtown Indianapolis with a green screen out the side of my car, trying to avoid hitting cars, carrying that in the locker room. We did our own videos. I taught, so it was that building of the process to sell the program, grow the program, that was really challenging. But at the same time now, like, when I'm at Butler and we're in the Big East and, we have all these, incredible amenities, I'm like, hey, I can still do that. And I have to learn now, okay, hey, pass this off, you do it, you take care of it. Because I didn't have that as we were going up.
I love that. That's fantastic. Let's finish talking about your team in this game again, because you guys average about 8.5 made threes a game. You really shoot the basketball well. I cover a lot of women's basketball. I'm in the SEC, and I kind of bounce around. And sometimes I always look at the stats and the number of teams that are shooting 32 or 33% from three. I'm like, well, why are we doing this if we can't make more shots than this? Your team makes threes. So how important is that for you going forward on a night when, you want these to fall to be able to provide you your points?
Yeah, the way this team's, made up, and again, I would say probably are something that'll improve in the years to come, is that we'll have more depth. We lack a little, punch and depth from the standpoint that we don't have a lot of guys that are beach off the dribble and get to the rim. So what we do have, 1 through 4, we shoot the ball really, really well. And over the course of the year, we don't put a ton of emphasis on, hey, we got to get X amount of threes up. It's more about trying to be efficient, get the ball moving. I don't like when the ball sticks, but we do have to make shots. And, against Providence in the conference tournament, we went 10 for 32, and I bet 28 of them were the most wide open shots we've had all year. And it was just a strange deal. It was a frustrating, part of it. And, as this program grows and gets better, the defensive side of things will be able to defend and keep ourselves in those type of games. right now, that's just not who we are. I mean, we've improved defensively, but we got to make some shots at the other end. And, there's been a lot of times this year we've been able to do that.
Games in Hinkle, special place. I bounce around the country and I broadcast college football every weekend. My first game this past year was Ohio State and Indiana. So we stayed in Indianapolis, and on Saturday morning, I said, I'm going to drive over and I'm going to knock on every door. And I couldn't get in. I wanted to get into Hinkle just to see it. It is a special place. Give me an idea what it's like to play home games there and just walk in and practice there, and what you might expect from an atmosphere with your fans in this game.
Well, I would give you a background for me. I growing up in the state, semi-state championships were held there all growing up, Butler basketball games growing up. So, I grew up coming to Hinkle and sitting in, the top level and smelling the popcorn and the atmosphere. And, I always said, and this is prior to working at Butler, I always said it was one of the top three places, I'd been to in the country. And I'd been to Fog Allen Fieldhouse and, some of those, but it's an electric place. You can sense the history of it. I think the horse pulleys, my understanding, are still in the bottom of the basement from when it was built. But, basketball in Indiana, we're a basketball rich state. We appreciate the traditions. So every time I walk out there, I just feel incredibly blessed. In fact, when I got the job, the offices are on the third floor. And so when I was offered the job, I walked out to call my wife, and I was staring down at the floor. And it was just such a surreal moment to go, wow, I get to coach here every single day and be part of it. So, we're excited for the game, weeknight game. We're a quick turnaround of, trying to get people to games and fans there. But, like I said, we've had an increase in attendance this year. The thing that's been neat to see is we've had a lot of repeat customers, people that have come, hey, let's check these guys out, see what it's like. And then you're seeing them again. They're bringing their, family members. They're bringing their daughters, and that's something that we're really looking forward to as we build this to make Hinkle the atmosphere that it's capable of being.
I think it's another story of the WNIT, Austin, that sometimes goes unnoticed, and whether that was, the sellout I saw in Arizona in 2019, but even last year at Fog Allen Fieldhouse, Kansas hosts 6 games, and talking to their coach afterwards, their fan base just built. I mean, the fans started to get into the tournament, and they started to show up, and it was the access to the players, and it was the ability to sit closer than they would in a men's game. And it felt like they built some fans going forward. And I don't know how many home games, that this might generate, but it does give another opportunity just to kind of engage with your customers.
Well, I think the first part is that we, just around the building, the staff at Butler, the people in the building, the security guard, they're talking about it. They're excited about it. So that to me is just a step that, hey, we're playing basketball in March, and we're playing basketball in Hinkle in March. And as you said, if we were fortunate enough to move on and then maybe get some more games, that thing can really build. And I'm really good friends with Amy Williams, that is in Nebraska now. And, I remember their run at South Dakota, and the way that thing, just kept growing and growing and growing. And the reality is that fan base was never the same after that. It's always been, they're packing that place out, but that build took place during the WNIT. And so I think, like, to your point, this can be a real momentum changer for programs.
Glad you mentioned that. 2 years ago, South Dakota State hosting the WNIT championship. People lined up in a sellout crowd to get in, propel the team forward, and the fan base as well. So I'm with you. They also say, Austin, that the committees at the NCAA level have a sense of humor. And I guess the example is Trev Alberts leaves Nebraska and goes to A&M, and then A&M and Nebraska play in the tournament for the men and the women. So if you win this game, you get Purdue. Which would be kind of a fun aspect, I'm sure, for you as well.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, we actually scrimmaged them this year in a closed scrimmage, just mainly because we aren't going to play too much during the regular season. But honestly, I think for both teams, if we're fortunate enough to move on, you've got some familiarity there. And you talked about this time of the year just being ready to go, wanting to play. I think for both teams, everybody's going to be excited about an in-state matchup if we're able to do that. But the reality for us is we are not a veteran group. We do not have the ability to look forward. We've got to make sure that we are ready to go tomorrow night, because this Bowling Green team, they've got veterans. They got kids that have played in postseason play, and they can shoot the ball really well. And it's funny, we played Bowling Green 2 years ago when IUPUI, and the point guard, I text our staff. I said, does she still like to go this direction? And I remembered that from our game. But that's that's how veteran this group is. That I've coached against a couple of these kids a few years ago at a different school, so we know it's going to be a tough matchup with Bowling Green.
Wow, that's fun too. Butler, Bowling Green, first round of the WNIT. Austin Parkinson was our guest. Austin, was great visiting with you, not just about your team this year, but kind of the excitement of playing in the postseason and what you've been able to do with this program. I know it's not easy, and sometimes we kind of gloss over the work to get to the results. And I know you appreciate the journey, and there's been a lot of hard work. So I know we'll be kind of looking forward to seeing how this game shakes out, but even more importantly, what you guys look like in years going forward, because I have a feeling the climb's going to be fun.
Well, I appreciate it, and we are looking forward to it.
Best wishes.
All right, thank you.